Hey guys, this is Miss Chester, and we're going to be going over evolution part 2. Alright, adaptations and variations. An adaptation is any variation that aids an organism's chance of survival in its environment. Alright, so there are many types of things that creates an adaptation that helps with better survival, and I'm going to be going over those different types today on our little in our little notes section. We had a lab where you guys were analyzing the moths. Here's a picture of what it was talking about. Alright, before the Industrial Revolution occurred, there were lichens on the trees. That's this white stuff that's on there. And because the white stuff, it allowed the moths that were very light to be able to blend in. Alright, so I'm sure that you can see on the computer, but here's a moth. Alright, so if you were a bird and you had to eat very quickly, you're going to eat the darker moths. So the dark moth gene existed, but it didn't exist as numerous because at that point, birds were able to see them best on that type of tree. Well, after the Industrial Revolution happened, coal plants moved in very near the trees, and soot began to sit on the trees. You see here's a tree that is now dark. Alright, so because of that, you can now see this moth a lot better than you can see this one. Alright, so the birds are going to fly down, they're going to see that bright moth a lot better, and that's why them to be able to be seen. Alright, so there's that example. So hopefully you understand that over a period of time it went from light to dark. That's me spelling dark, not very well. Alright, the next thing is mimicry. Alright, if I said that somebody in the class always is mimicking someone else, it'd probably be annoying because that means they'd be copying them. Alright, and there are many different animals that mimic something else. Alright, so it's a structural adaptation that enables one species to resemble another species. Alright, so right here we see two types of butterflies. One's a monarch, and we know that monarchs are poisonous to birds. So a viceroy, which is this one, the bigger one, allows itself to mimic the monarch so it will not get eaten. So you normally have a toxic model, which would be your monarch, and you have a non-toxic model that looks similar to that toxic model so that it will not get bothered. Alright, here's something else. A coral snake and a scarlet king snake. Alright, so these guys look very similar. They do look different, but if you see the snake, you're probably going to run. But especially the yellow color and the red color means they're probably venomous. But one of them really isn't. Alright, so there's always that little saying, red on black, friend of Jack, red on yellow, kill a fella. So if you go by that, this one, we know, is red on Jack. So this one is not poisonous. This one is the mimicked scarlet king snake, but the coral snake is actually the one you got to watch out for, and that is the red on yellow. Alright. So basically with mimicry, you have a toxic model of some sort, and you have a mimicked model that is not toxic. Alright. So again, more types of mimicry. Again, you have several toxic species that share similar characteristics like bees, hornets, yellow jackets, and wasps. These guys look very similar. The bottom one, though, is a type of fly that does not have a stinger. But again, if I saw it, being that I'm allergic to bees, I'm not going to be close to it. So this does help it protect itself just because it developed the ability to look similar to a species that really is toxic in some way, be it has poison or it has a stinger, anything like that. Alright, camouflage. We all know what camouflage does. It's an adaptation that helps animals blend in with their surroundings. Alright, here's a frog that looks just like a leaf. I think some of you guys saw that in class already. So here's his head, here's one of the first legs, this is his little belly, here's one of the other legs, there's his rump, and here's the back end of his leg down to his toes, here's his knee, back to the side, and right whatever. But here's what makes it look so much like a leaf is the back end and how he's got so many bony looking parts like an actual leaf. So if we take these red marks off, you can actually see he really looks like a leaf. Alright, and so animals flying above or messing around aren't going to see him as easily, so he's going to be more likely to survive, reproduce, and pass his genes that make him look like this on to the next generation. Alright, so sometimes you can have a physiological adaptation, alright, and that would be changes in an organism's metabolic processes. All right, and that would be something like bacteria, weeds that are pests, and species of insects. All right, examples would be penicillin. You can think about the flu. With penicillin, we know that some people that take penicillin aren't actually doesn't actually work for them anymore. And some of the reasoning behind that would be because we've taken penicillin so much, and let's say here's our little sample here, and it normally kills, if these are all really bad infection, the penicillin will kill, maybe this much. Well, what's left is able to reproduce, and it keeps that gene that helped where penicillin won't kill it. So the next time penicillin may kill only that much, until eventually it's not killing enough, and penicillin is not effective anymore for you to take. Also, you could be allergic, which is a pretty good issue. Those of you who don't take your medicine all the way through, you increase the rate of which medicines won't work for you in the future. So that's why you should always take your medicine, because you'll kill part of the population and the rest of it's able to make an antibody against it and continue living. All right, weeds that are pests, you can put Roundup on it, and Roundup normally kills everything, but sometimes what we found is what it doesn't kill is able to reproduce, and therefore we have a lot of more weed-resistant pests, and so we put a bunch of stuff on it, and we can't get rid of it in our yards and our gardens, and they continue to come back up, and eventually we may not have a chemical strong enough to kill these things. So it's kind of scary. And of course, species of insects, fire ants, we're having a hard time killing them. There's something in there that we're using that the chemicals they get used to. Normally it's things that reproduce very quickly. We know that bacteria and weeds and insects reproduce really quickly, bacteria being the quickest because they just start with one and they split and go to two over and over again. And the flu, of course, is ever-changing, so sometimes our vaccines do not work. And again, this is all physiological adaptations that help it to better survive, which can affect us in the future. So we want to always make sure we take our medicines, and we don't take medicine if we really don't need it. All right. The next thing we talk about is fossils, and what they do is they provide a record of early life and evolutionary history. We talked a little bit about that last time. But there are three different types of structures that we look at: homologous structures, analogous structures, and vestigial structures. But first, we'll start with homologous. Remember, homo meaning same. All right. Look at this picture here. We have a human arm, a cat arm, a whale arm, and a bat arm. All right. We have similar bone structures in each one, and they're primarily used for about the same thing. So what you need to know about that is it's similar in arrangement and function. All right, normally both. So it's similar in both. Analogous is similar in function. So if we look here, this bird's wing is not made up of the same stuff that a dragonfly's wing is made up of. Not at all. This is feathers. This is like scaly stuff. All right. So we know that it's not similar in arrangement, but it is similar in function. So if you see this on the test, if it has the same type of part, then you know it's analogous. But if it's made up of similar things, basically, guys, if just going back for a second, if it's got this drawing right here with bones in it, it's going to be homologous. If it has something that's totally different, like a bat wing and a bird wing, you know that they don't have a similar bone structure, and it's going to be a analogous function, which means they're common, but they do not have a common evolutionary origin, which means a bird and a dragonfly are very much separate. Very, 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 very. Not even similar in the evolutionary history. All right, and a structure becomes vestigial when the species no longer needs the feature for its original function, yet it's still inherited as part of the body plan for the species. All right, so a good example of that would be an ostrich. It's got these things on the side that it can't even use. All right, they're too big. The wings are too small, so it has wings, but they cannot fly. All right, so that would be a vestigial structure. Whales, if I will draw a little whale, they actually have a pelvic bone. And we know they have a little bone right here. Pelvic bones are made for walking, all right, of some sort. So we know that maybe because of his fossil and the bones that are in whales, maybe a long time ago, a type of whale was able to crawl or something that needed a pelvic bone, but they obviously don't need it anymore. It's vestigial. Our tonsils are vestigial, and our appendixes are vestigial. We don't need them. we don't use them. We could have them taken out and it would not affect us at all. So anything in common? Well, basically, Darwin is able to study many things such as fossils, similar animals in different locations, and physiology experiments to see that things do change over time to better adapt and survive. So if you think back, we've covered, camouflage. It helps them be able to hide better so that they can pass their genes on to the next generation. So it's adaptation, which helps in the natural selection, which then turns in over millions of years to evolution or changing of that population. Again, smaller things such as bacteria and insects will happen a lot quicker. We can see this happen very quickly, but with humans and bigger animals, this would take years and years to see it occur. We can see some things actually changing in animals, and if you look up something that you can find a for real example of a population changing because of maybe the weather around here, that would be extra credit for tomorrow. So if you can bring that in. And those of you who aren't going to be here, have a Merry Christmas. And if you want to send me a little message about what you found, that would count also. And keep looking at Twitter and keep looking at EDU because I may post something depending on how well everybody works tomorrow. All right, thanks guys. Bye.